Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Michaela Peters. It's really funny because I keep saying that I'm going to take a break from doing these, but I'm just so in the habit of doing them that I'm like, I may as well continue, and it just feels right. And I usually take my lunch hour to do these, and it's my lunch hour, and I ate lunch pretty quick today, so let's go ahead and do this. I also don't have to work at the restaurant today, which is great, but that's also out of necessity because I need to start my PhD research and come up with something by Friday, so yes, I will be on the computer a lot of today. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to show something interesting, which is a educational timeline that I had to put together when I was applying for my PhD because I showed it to my advisor because the advisor is like, not that she said this verbatim, but like, oh, you're kind of old to be starting your PhD, which, by the way, people do start their PhDs pretty late. They're usually in industry for a while, but I was coming out of my master's degree, and she's like, so, like, what have you been doing for all this time? And I'm like, well, let me show you, and that's what I'm going to show you here today, because the reason why I'm going to show this is because this may be less relevant to people who are on my channel who have not followed me on Instagram for like the last 10 years during, that I'm actually going to discuss here in this timeline. But I've been traveling a lot, and people are like, how does this girl travel? And I'm going to break that down into two things, which I'm not going to deny that there is some level of privilege involved, which I would argue a lot of people in the world have. A lot of people in the world also don't have. But I would also say there was a lot of hard work and planning that was involved. And that's the part that you can control if you're interested in doing this. So that's basically what I'm going to maybe advocate for people to do if this is a lifestyle they're interested in. I remember I had one friend approach me and be like, I wish I could travel like you. And I'm like, you too can go get a bachelor's degree and do intern rotations at NASA and go study Russian abroad. You can do anything you want to do, really. But of course, everything comes at a cost, and there are trade-offs, and you have to make choices. I, for one, have always lived in the cheapest place I possibly could, even if it meant sacrificing some of my mental health. Yes, I will be honest about that. I've had some terrible roommate situations. I've had a lot of roommates, and to me, I'm not the kind of person who loves spending a ton of time at home. So therefore, I rather spend that time outside the house and spend the extra money I get from paying less rent outside the house than just, oh, let me pay more rent to be inside of a house all the time. It's not my thing. As long as I have my own room, which I've always had my own room, very appreciative of that. Um, yeah, that's all I really need, and then just leave the house for other things. Okay, so I graduated in 2013. I also made some very interesting educational decisions, which are contrary to what a lot of Americans might want to do. And I specify this here because, I did talk about this in one of my Russian videos. Like, going to community college in the US is like, only stupid kids go to community college. And I was like, well, I want to save money, so I'm going to go to community college. Or just like, oh, you couldn't get in somewhere else. But I had a free scholarship. I had this thing called NJ Stars 1, and then I also went on to get NJ Stars 2 when I transferred to a 4-year university. So that saved me money. And then I also commuted to the 4-year university where I got my degree from, which is Rutgers, which is where everybody in New Jersey goes, pretty much. It's just like the magnet of all New Jersey college kids, like, honestly. And I commuted there. That kind of sucked, but I did it. And yeah, that was great though, because once I finally got to Rutgers is a pretty big name, so I would apply to things, and I felt like I'd actually start getting things. Like, I finally started getting internships. I finally started being able to apply for these prestigious scholarship programs to go study Russian in foreign countries, and all of these things gave me all the opportunities that I had, that I took advantage of, that also allowed me to travel. So having this very non-traditional schedule, though, is the other thing that enabled it, because all right, now I'll actually get into the schedule because I flashed it up here, and here it is again. So I graduated high school in 2013. I've worked at a restaurant for a very long time. Working at the restaurant has basically been the primary way that I have been able to support my travels for almost a decade. I will make 10 years at the restaurant next summer if I'm still there. We'll see where I end up, because I might move away from the restaurant. Let's see what happens. And then I had my first semester at community college. Some of community college I worked part-time at the restaurant, some of community college I didn't, and the reason for that is because I knew that there was a very specific scholarship where if you had a perfect GPA, you would be able to get it, and I was very annoyed. I had like 1A minus because of this math class, and I was really annoyed because I had an 89.7 and she didn't round it to a 90, and I'm like, that's not even mathematically correct. Like, what irony for having a math teacher to not do that. And that's the reason I had 3.99 instead of a 4.0. Very annoying, but yeah, 4.0 is like the perfect standard. Okay, so I was at Rutgers for 2 years, and while I was working at the same restaurant that I've been working at now, um, actually, wait a second, that is not true. I worked at another restaurant. I like that's pretty close to the restaurant I work at where my grandfather was manager. Anyway, that's not important. Um, so yeah, but I've worked in restaurants in general for yeah, actually a long time since I was 16, so it's been like 12 years now. Oof, yeah, okay. But yeah, restaurants, especially serving, can, be good enough money to help you do things you want to do with the money. Okay, so I got my associate's degree. That's when I got hired at another restaurant. I think I was actually between like four different restaurants, but whatever. So, working at restaurants to support myself on the side. I originally didn't want to, but my family really encouraged me to do it, and honestly, I'm appreciative they did because it's been helpful in terms of finances. Okay, so I eventually transferred to Rutgers, and then once I was at Rutgers, I got an internship, and then that summer kind of sucked because that was when I started doing the thing that I do now that I hate, but I still do anyway, which is working full time and then also working part time at the restaurant. But I was saving up money. Why? Good question. I think I just wanted to because I don't remember what the goal was at that point. But eventually, I did go on to intern at NASA. And that was great because I had a salary and I was able to put away some of that salary so that I could then go study Russian in Kyrgyzstan over that summer. Another thing, though, I have to give a shout out to my dad, as much as I may be annoyed with him sometimes, because my dad did help me with college, like in terms of minimum expenses like food, shelter, and um, transportation. There we go. So he did help me so I could actually save some of my money so that I could use it to travel. So like I would pay for like my plane tickets and all my expenses while I was abroad. But I would also go to these super cheap countries where it's like I could afford stuff like Kyrgyzstan, which was great. Other trips I went on with my grandparents did help pay for some stuff like lodging and stuff, but a lot of times I would pay for my flights. Not always, but a lot of times. And I have been doing like a lot more traveling on my own, especially after I started learning Russian. So after the age of 21. So I would say up until the age of 21, I did a lot of traveling with other people, but I started going abroad by myself finally at 21, which honestly seems kind of late when I think about my European counterparts who I met when I was in Finland. Because those kids start living on their own and traveling by themselves so young. And I was like, wow, Europeans, they really know what they're doing. Okay. And they also take more vacation than us. Yeah, I always wanted to be a European, honestly. I'm still working on that goal. All right, so I learned Russian in Kyrgyzstan, and then I was doing this thing where I was doing NASA rotations every spring. Why? First off, I was really afraid to be in Texas in the summer, obviously, because of the weather. Yeah, that goes without saying. And also, you would get more weeks in when you would do a spring semester as opposed to a summer semester, or they're called tours technically. And, that made a lot of sense because then I would get more money that I could then use to travel with. I remember I had a particularly bad rotation in 2018. That's when I was in procurement, which, I'm not homies with procurement. And I kind of impulsively decided to go learn Russian in Armenia and do an internship program there. That was super cool, honestly. I was only there for 6 weeks, but yeah, I mean, both of these summers were really great and definitely like milestones or just very important experiences to me. And I actually have written a series of diaries about these experiences, which I am thinking about creating a blog and publishing so people can read them. Okay, that's a to-do item. All right, so then before so I left NASA in 2019 in May. It was very sad. I resigned so that I could take a Boren scholarship to go study in Kyrgyzstan. And that was a really hard decision. That was actually, I always say, like the hardest decision of my life because I was always like, I want to work at NASA. And this is like, I liked the idea of having my life all decided. But as I said, I'd sometimes be like, do I really want to live here forever? Like, it's so hot here. Like, can I deal with this? And then, ultimately I'm not there anymore, but whatever. That is what it is. So I made the decision to go study Russian in Kyrgyzstan. And I came back to New Jersey that summer, worked at the restaurant all summer to save up some money so that I would have like, a nice little sum of money to be able to spend in Kyrgyzstan on like random expenses. Okay. And I was also really lucky that I did get the Boren scholarship. And then I also did something super weird and sneaky, which was at that point, I think I was 23 or 24, which is the age at which FAFSA in the US, which is basically how you get like student grants and funding and money, etc. for college. And like if your parents don't make a lot of money, the government will give you money. But because they stopped considering my parents' money, I was then like poor enough to qualify for some money. So I was able to get some grants for the government, like a Pell Grant, and I was able to take that money and like have them release it to be able to pay for the remainder of the language program I was on that the Boren scholarship didn't cover, because I think the total cost ended up being like something crazy like $25,000, and Boren gave me $20,000, and then I came up with the remaining $5,000 by jumping through a bunch of hoops, being very annoying, emailing a lot of people, having to get a lot of people to sign off on different like courses saying that they would count towards my major, and then I added a third major, which was European Studies. And yeah, so this is one of the things I always talk about with the US, like very different than Finland, is like the squeaky wheel really gets the grease. And it's like if you are very annoying in the US, you will always get what you want. And maybe that's one thing I like about the US, if I'm going to be positive on that note. All right, so then I got deported from Kyrgyzstan. No, just kidding. But I had to come back because it was COVID, and that sucked. That was actually the worst week. That was the second worst week of my life. The first worst week was when I had to leave Finland, like almost a year ago. That was terrible. I hated that week. But this week was so stressful because I was like, oh no, when do I have to go home? Like I literally had like I the Sunday before, I changed my flight to the following Sunday, and then I still had to leave by Friday morning, and I remember I was like not done getting rid of stuff, saying bye to friends, I was like getting my nails done, like all this stuff. Okay, anyway, so I came back in like March. Yeah, that's when it all happened, and then I was doing like online classes in Kyrgyzstan. I had to like wake up really early for them and blah blah blah. And then I started. Okay, so this was also during COVID, and so I was not working at the restaurant because they didn't want me. So I was like sitting around unemployed, which honestly was not that bad. But I was like, what do I do with all this time I've never had before in my life? So obviously, I studied languages, my favorite hobby. And I also did some stuff where I was able to apply for grants where different organizations and programs would give me money and like to study languages, and basically they just pay for the program for me. And I would come up with these arguments about why I was qualified for the scholarship, even though it didn't exactly match me. It was something like I needed to be a graduate student, but I was like, I'm not a graduate student yet, but I will be a graduate student next year. So I can't even remember what I did, but it was pretty sneaky and it worked out. Not sneaky, but it was definitely stretching it. Let's put it that way. All right, so I had that summer where I studied Russian online at Indiana University, and then I finished out Rutgers online. Honestly, that was pretty chill. I had pretty good grades that semester, so that was sweet. Then I studied Arabic. I had been studying Arabic for 3 years. I actually stopped studying Arabic right when I came to Finland, and I have not resumed it. I kind of would like to, but yeah, I've had other priorities. But Arabic is fun, honestly. I did actually like really look at like going abroad to study Arabic, but that also just financially, I was like, don't know about that. So I studied Arabic online, also did something very similar where I was like, please give me a scholarship because blah, 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 write some application, write something, then they give me money. Yeah, so I've gotten a lot of money to study in the US by writing scholarship essays. I'm kind of like, it's sort of like gambling. All I do is waste my time and then maybe I get some money, and it's like very exciting. I don't know. Okay, so that's probably also why I like working at the restaurant, because it's like gambling. You like never know how much money you're gonna make anytime you walk in for a shift. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's really bad. Most of the time it's pretty mid. All right, so then I went to Finland in 2021, which was still COVID. It was annoying, and I was there for my whole first year. And okay, yeah, I'm trying to explain how I did some of this travel. Well, what I'm trying to explain here is that a lot of the travel was funded, not exactly funded, but these programs were funded by the US government. Thank you, tax dollars, all taxpayers here, including myself. Yeah, so US government. It was actually really funny. I was talking to my brother yesterday, side tangent, and he was like, I don't benefit from any of the programs that I pay taxes on. I'm thinking like, actually I have benefited from tax dollars, so thanks everybody. I guess that's how that works. All right, so yeah, like during these specific times, like I was already abroad, so I do remember in like 2017 after I went to Kyrgyzstan, I went to Denmark and actually met up with some British friend I'd made. Like previous to this, I traveled with family a lot. Like I have a whole family, a traveling family. So I traveled with my grandmother. I would travel with my aunt, and uncle, like, so I had been to England, like I had been a bunch of places with my family. So then I started traveling alone in 2017, and I went to Denmark with some British people. That was pretty fun. And then I would always take advantage too, like when I would have a layover just for a day, I would like leave the airport. Like one time I did that in Ukraine, obviously before the war. Well, not maybe not obviously, but yes, before the war in like 2018. On my way back from Armenia, I did that, and yeah, with Kyrgyzstan, it was Denmark, but that was like a proper trip. I actually after Armenia, I think I went back to Kyrgyzstan for like a week. I was trying to go to Kyrgyzstan every year, which I was doing rather successfully up until 2021. Wow, so there were like 5 years in there where I was going to Kyrgyzstan every year. It was pretty good. Yeah, unfortunately, I kind of broke that in 2021, and that's where we are today. All right, so, moving on. Yeah, so I started studying alone. I'd already be in these locations, like in Kyrgyzstan. I was near Kazakhstan. I went to Kazakhstan. Then I was on a program that one when I was on the Boren scholarship, where I went to Turkmenistan and they paid for that. And I went to Uzbekistan. Like, well, it was all included in the program. So I went to all those Central Asian countries. Then my grandparents came to visit me, and then I took them there. And then I went to Armenia. Like, there are a lot of countries I've visited over and over again just to visit friends. Mostly Kyrgyzstan and Armenia. Obviously, I visit Finland a lot now. And yeah, I kind of like I got to a point where I didn't want to keep moving and exploring new countries because I would get really sad because I would have these friends and then I would have to like not be I couldn't see the friends as much as I wanted to, and I was like really upset about it. So yeah. So then yeah, I came back and I suffered some. Now we're in 2021. Well, 2022 rather. I did the annoying thing again that I did in 2016, which was I worked full time and I worked at the restaurant because I was just trying to get as much money as I could so that I could travel again. I did travel quite a bit while I was in Finland because you're in Europe and everything is cheaper. Thank you, Ryanair. Shout out to that airline company, like the Spirit Airlines. So I traveled to like Italy. There's a really cheap flight to Milan from Lappeenranta. Took that flight a couple times. Sweden, Estonia, they're right there. I had actually already visited those countries before because I went to go visit a friend in Finland in 2019 right before I went back to NASA. And I guess that was another thing that I always dreaded sort of about starting to work full time is I knew that I was going to be super time poor, limited, whatever. And, that has been the reality because now I am just sort of like, oh, I work. And I have traveled some while I'm working. It's just like not the same because I have to be working a lot and I only have so many days off. So it's like really big balancing act. Whereas before it'd be like I just save up a bunch of money and then I would like have time. Like that's the thing that you miss about being a student. I remember I had one teacher who was like, you can't even fathom how much free time you have. I don't necessarily agree with that in the sense that like I was putting a lot of work and time and it felt like every spare moment of my life force was going into getting good grades. But then I remember when I went to NASA the first time, I was like, oh, I like this because I don't have homework and it's like, after 5 o'clock it's your time. But at the same time, I like managing my own time, so I don't love the 9 to 5 thing, which is what I like about my company now. I mean, I do more or less work to 9 to 5, but they're not super strict about it, so that's cool. All right. I'm just trying to think about where else I've gone. Like while I was in Finland. I mean, I had been to France and Spain also, which I had gone to while I was living in Kyrgyzstan. So I guess that's another thing too. Like while I would already be located abroad in another country, a lot of times I would travel from that country because it was just like I was already over there. Uh, like yeah, there were so many countries I've been to. I've been to more than 43 countries. I think I said that, or I've been to 43. So there's that. So yeah, with Finland, like I was going to more local places. I did go to like Serbia, Montenegro with some friends. Italy, I already said. Russia, Poland. Okay, that's everything I can think of right now. So Finland was cool like that. Like everything was online, classes were pretty chill. I had friends who wanted to travel and we were able to do it on the cheap. So that was really sweet. I came back, yeah, like I said, I had the internship, and I traveled more the second semester. I was mostly only staying within Finland by the spring semester because I had a Finnish internship, which was somewhat remote. They didn't really care if I was in the office or not, but I went there a lot just to get out of the house. And then the summer of 2023, which was last summer, I traveled a lot. I went to Malta. I went to Australia. That was cool. Um, where else did I go? I wouldn't advise going to Australia though. That's like the most expensive plane ticket I've ever bought in my life. It was really a lot. Yeah, I don't think there's a way around that. But a lot of times, like while I was in school, I would always travel either in the summer, even though I don't like traveling in the summer because it's more expensive, or a lot of times I travel in January when I had that break between semesters. So yeah, I was just trying to get as much. I wouldn't say as much traveling in, but I did some stuff. Like I also went to Croatia for like a few days right before I went to Malta. And then I also, which Malta was with my family, by the way, my grandparents and stuff, because they like to be international like that too. And then the Serbia Montenegro was right before that. And then I've been working. And then PhD stuff is going to happen. And I am remote for both things, so I will be able to travel around. But in the last year, because I'm like based in the US with the US time zones, I've been traveling primarily in the US. So I go to a lot of different states. Like I went to Texas for a few weeks because I have a friend who lives there. And that's another thing is I will just go visit people so that I don't have to pay for lodging. Um, where else have I gone? I went out. Well, this I did have to pay for lodging. Checked out Seattle, Oregon, Vancouver. Um, okay, I guess it hasn't been that many places. And then sometimes I just drive around in the Northeast. I go down to Maryland, Pennsylvania, and stuff like that. So I'm just kind of all over. That's how it goes. So yeah, what's my point with this? I had a very weird schedule, but I made it work through working very hard when I was in the US, and of course I have to give a shout out to my dad and my stepmom for letting me be in the house still, because that's part of what has allowed this. Like I always have a place to come back to, even though right now that might change soon. Well, I mean, like it won't be the same place. Who knows? Okay, I'm still working on this plan. But this is what has been going on, and I'm gonna keep working full time and do my PhD because I'm honestly feeling mentally understimulated. Because working, you're doing like the same thing all the time, and I just like need more variety than that. But yeah, so what I'm trying to say is this very weird schedule is accessible to people. Now, it kind of was weird that I was at Rutgers from 2015 to 2021. People were not so keen on that. They were like, how are you still in school? Like, I remember my little sister be like, I don't understand how you're still in school. And then she's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm like, I am grown up and I'm a waitress. Well, I mean, and now I'm like a data analyst, but whatever. That was funny. So, yeah, I mean, it was definitely weird and awkward, but I reached all my goals. Like, I got to go work at NASA. That was a goal. I got to become fluent in Russian. That was a goal. Like, a lot of this was dedicated to trying to become fluent in Russian, which, like, I am. You know, it's always a work in progress, but I'm there. And, yeah, I guess it's like if you can get over to Europe, and I encourage people to apply for a Fulbright scholarship, too, because that's why I went to Finland. If you can get over to Europe, that's really great because you can then travel around Europe from there. I think traveling in the US is very expensive. That's why I don't do it very often unless I'm specifically going to visit somebody. And I try to explain this to people, and people seem to not get it, but that is what I'm here to say today. And, you know, I think that is everything that I can think of for informing you about how I have traveled as much as I have. And I would like to thank higher education of the US, I guess, for the fact that I've had these opportunities because that's where a lot of these travel opportunities came from, but also thank my family for being so travel oriented from such a young age, getting me into it and, you know, me sticking with it. That's been another big one. And I guess my own self for, you know, keeping in mind the goals, dedicating my financial resources towards those, using my funds towards that. Because I think I figured, you know, I will always have these memories forever of traveling while I was young, but eventually one day I will grow up and probably, you know, become more stationary, have a family, and, you know, it obviously all that stuff becomes harder the older you get. For many reasons, aside from having family, health things happen the older you get, you know, lots of stuff. So I'm very appreciative that, you know, I've had the life I've had. I have no regrets. I'm incredibly appreciative, and you know, it's been hard. I'm not going to say that none of this was without challenges. It can be very exhausting traveling and being on the go a lot, but I just think about like you have those memories forever, and to me that's what is the most valuable about these kinds of experiences. It really opens your eyes. You see how other people live. It gives you perspective. You're exposed to new ways of thinking. It's just, you know, traveling costs money, but I think I saw the sign in an airport one time. It's like traveling is the only, what was it? It was something about like spending money that makes you richer. It's like it's the only thing you can spend money on that makes you richer, but like, internally. So I agree with that. So I guess I would encourage people to, I mean, I'm not saying you have to do something crazy like this, but even just, setting aside very specific, amounts of money and trying to make going to another country a goal. As Americans, and I don't know how many Americans sit here and watch these videos, but we are in a very privileged position also where I know that things are expensive here and expensive for us, but if you take your money and set it aside and you take it literally anywhere else in the world, you are going to have more money than most of those people. That is just how it works for whatever reason. It's, the US dollar, there's a reason why the US is the strongest economy. So if you go to Kyrgyzstan, you go to China, even I would argue in Europe, like, they have hostels. I usually always stay in hostels, it's another thing. But even a lot of hotels in Europe are cheaper than they would be in the US. And the food, a lot of times too. And even like when I think about the US compared to Finland, Finnish housing prices are super cheap compared to the US. I know the Netherlands is like more money, so I've been told, but it's still less than the US. And same thing with Italy. Yeah, because I've heard like rent prices there are like 800. In the US, everything's more than 1,000. Unless you're like renting a room in somebody's house, but I'm talking about independent living. Yes. All right. So that's everything that I have for today. Very ranty today. And I hope this was interesting. And again, want to encourage those of you who still have the goal of traveling to, again, not do something quite this crazy, but, reach your goal. Write down the goal. Think about the goal. Visualize the goal. We had to make these vision board things when I was in high school. And then mine just showed like a bunch of countries and languages, like alphabets. And, I think I'm living out my vision board from like 15 years ago. So it's great. All right, everybody. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and I encourage you and hope that you can reach your goals of traveling as well if you have them. And if not, I hope it was interesting for you to learn about how I've reached mine. All right, everybody. Have a nice day. Bye.